Thank you for joining me today. The media has framed 2020 as a banner year in the so-called content wars, filled with winners and losers. Today I'm going to take you through research that we've conducted that has yielded a framework for understanding the content wars and how consumers make decisions that impact the entertainment industry at large, even in these unique times. I'm Andrea Marker, the head of content and platform strategy at Ipsos, and these shows are my coronavirus survival pack. So feel free to ask me anything about surviving the next few weeks on a few rolls of toilet paper and a streaming subscription, or of course, the research we cover today. We have a lot of interesting ground to cover, so if we don't get to all of your questions, we'll definitely do our best to follow up with you over email. Today I'm going to briefly introduce you to the division responsible for the work I'm presenting, and of course take you through a new model for thinking about the content landscape that is still applicable in today's environment. I'm part of Ipsos Media Development, a boutique outfit within Ipsos that's comprised of media experts, many with direct client-side experience, myself included. We work with clients in the entertainment, media, and tech industries to empower them to understand their audiences, monetize their platforms, and stay ahead of the game in an evolving media landscape. In addition to the quant and qual solutions we provide our clients, we've also developed several syndicated products that you may be aware of, including long-standing research like the Affluence Survey, TV Dailies, the Kids and Family Study, and our newest product focused on OTT services, Streaming 360. These syndicated studies are continuously fielded, so we will be measuring changes in perceptions and behaviors driven by the coronavirus. As researchers, it's important to point out two things in this time of uncertainty. One, while B2B audiences are impacted because most people are working from home in developed markets and social distancing is required to temporarily close our phone centers and shift qual online interviewing techniques remain unaffected based on response rates that we're seeing. And two, conventional wisdom in the past may have been to pause field during a time like this, but the behaviors we're seeing today are likely the new normal for a while, and we may see something like this again in the future. We'll be leveraging our continuous tracking data to issue a POV on this evolving landscape in the next day or so. I'm going to take just a moment to talk about Streaming 360, since I'm going to be sharing some of that data from the study in this presentation. This research covers broad landscape topics, dives into why consumers make the choices they do when it comes to streaming, and leverages advanced analytics, including an interactive discrete choice model simulator, to uncover the why behind the what, and also empowers media companies to optimize and activate changes in their products and positioning in order to grow their market share. And now, what you've dialed in for is Context the New King. At the beginning of this year, the number one question on everyone's mind was, who's going to be the big content wars winner? Well, to answer that, we have to consider just how many options there are these days when it comes to content beyond just TV and streaming. When there's 532 shows, 871 movies, 9,000 video games, 700,000 podcasts, and Cardi B on Instagram, how do you choose to spend your time when there is just so much out there? To understand how people make content decisions, we partnered with the UT Austin Innovation Lab and talked to just about everyone. We interviewed 99 people in person, we analyzed 1,500 video diaries of content viewing occasions, and we surveyed 17,000 people ages 13 to 54 using the Ipsos Knowledge Panel, which is the largest probability-based online panel in the US, for a truly representative read. So with all that content out there, where do you begin? Well, we started with what we thought was a deceptively simple question. What mood were you in when you watched that show or played that game or tuned in to that podcast? And we discovered 8 underlying emotional motivations that help describe why and how people make the content choices that they do. And as you can see here, they include things like unwind, escape, discover, pass the time, connect, stay up to date, identify, and critique. But don't worry, I know what you're thinking. Not another webinar on need states. I promise you this isn't that. Rather than spend the next 20 slides talking about need states, I'm going to focus instead on something really interesting that emerged from this research. Everyone satisfies their need states differently. Just look at how people satisfy the need to escape.
If I'm in a mood where I want to escape, the genre that I'll watch will be
fantasy type shows.
something that's real, a romantic comedy.
Game of Thrones, Westworld.
Grey's Anatomy, Bachelorette.
We play video games. There's a lot of drama surrounding it. It's not of this world, right? And so to be able to just kind of escape into that fantasy, I really like that too.
So pick me. Choose me. Love me.
Grey's Anatomy, it's gonna make me cry, it's gonna make me laugh, it's gonna break my heart. You know, Shonda Rhimes, that lady, man, she's good. She's broken my heart so many times.
Will you marry me?
I think because it still has that
lovey-dovey feeling, but it also has that feeling where a show could be funny and it kind of gets your mind off of a lot of other things that are going on in your life.
I think when we want to escape beyond just playing video games, we watch sci-fi. We kind of want something different, something like an outer world experience. And I think sci-fi shows actually give that to us because it's nothing that's truly happening right now.
Star Wars exists.
Oh my gosh.
So besides learning that Star Wars exists, as you saw in that video, everyone had a very different way of satisfying their need states. Just think about what you're currently doing to escape the news. Maybe you're watching Love is Blind or The Masked Singer to get your mind off of things. Or maybe you're watching Contagion or binging old episodes of Doomsday Preppers to see if maybe, just maybe, those people were a little bit right. So what does that mean for how we think about how people choose what to watch? Well, it's not really just about the content. It's really about the context surrounding that content. Context matters. Any social psychologist will tell you that. But for content, context matters in 4 key ways that all happen to begin with the letter A. Access, or how you watch something. Audience, not just who you're watching with, but how you're socializing content. Agenda, or how something fits into your day, whether you have a few minutes or a few hours. And finally, attractors, or how something even gets on your radar in the first place. So when you combine content and context, you have a powerful lens for understanding how people are making content decisions. But of all these factors, we uncovered that access is really the biggest predictor of how people select something to watch. So let's talk about that and what that means. Last year, you could flip through 192 channels on cable, and according to the New York Times, there were over 271 streaming services available to subscribe to. But on average, people only tuned in to 13 channels, and we found in our Streaming 360 research that the average household only subscribes to 3 streaming services. And with more content than ever before, there's also more ways to spend money. In 2019, we found that consumers spend about $33 a month on streaming, and there's honestly only so much more that they're willing to spend. In late 2019, 36% of respondents say they're open to adding a new service, but only half as many are willing to spend more in order to do so. Importantly, 7 in 10 consumers say that they're happy to keep their streaming budget as is, meaning that they're either going to have to cut a service or trade a password with a friend in order to take a chance on a new one. Those who are most open to spending are also the least reliable demographic, millennial males. Yes, they want to add services, but as we've seen in our research time and time again, they're also the most likely to pirate. With the economic anxiety many are facing today, these numbers are likely even higher. Just look at what's happening with the coronavirus. While streaming is definitely up, so is piracy. Remember Contagion? It's currently available to Cinemax subscribers or for rental for a few dollars on iTunes. It may have reached the top 10 on iTunes, but it's also reached the top 10 on torrent charts. And Popcorn Time, the quote-unquote Netflix for piracy app, has come back from the dead. So given that only 18% of consumers are willing to increase their spend, the question becomes, how do you entice people to try one of the myriad new streaming services that are launching this year? Streaming services have been focusing on exclusivity, and that would seem to be the magic bullet, right? If you can't get your favorite show on one service, you'd subscribe to one that had it. Well, it turns out that's not really the case. Ultimately, access trumps content.
Netflix was the OG, and it's almost like I'm wired now to when I'm starting to look for something new, my finger clicks the Netflix button first because it's the first app in my entertainment folder.
HBO just had a thing come out. I really want to see that show. But I refuse to order HBO because it doesn't make sense to buy an app that's going to have the same thing over and over and over again, and you get no worth out of it.
Put my stuff in Jell-O again.
The only one that I would miss that I do tend to watch when I'm wanting to kind of mind out or whatever is The Office. So I will be sad to see The Office go, but that's not enough reason for me to pay monthly.
When Avatar: The Last Airbender left Netflix, I was okay with it. I rewatched it many times, and it was a memory to me. So I found a new show.
If only the British baking show was taken off of Netflix, but everything else was left to satisfy my need, I definitely still stay with Netflix. I'd probably just Google Cupcake Wars and watch repeat shows constantly.
If my favorite show left my streaming service, I probably would pirate it, because now I'm older and I can and I know how.
So as you saw in that video, we found over and over again that people are far more loyal to their favorite platforms than their favorite shows. Why is that? Well, a primary reason is that we're all really lazy. It's a lot easier for an algorithm to serve you up something similar to what you'd want to watch than it is to actively sort through a bunch of different apps, pull out your credit card, or remember your password to find a show. So going back to Contagion, if Netflix doesn't have it, you don't want to dig out your credit card or try to remember your iTunes password. Maybe you watch Outbreak, which has become one of their most popular movies, instead. And it's not just about TV shows either. Even though people have intense relationships with creators, their loyalty isn't necessarily to them, it's to the platform. When a studio wants to generate excitement for a new movie or a TV show, or a brand wants to launch a new campaign, what do? They cast a star. And any gaming fan would tell you that Ninja is the star streamer in the community. Yet when he moved from Twitch to Mixer, Microsoft's new streaming platform, his fans didn't necessarily follow, and the month he made the switch, Mixer's minutes streamed were actually down month over month. And as you can see here, in Twitch, in August 2019, he had 14.7 million followers. He switched from Twitch to Mixer at that time, and several months later, in January 2020, he still only had a fraction of the followers that he had on Twitch. And access isn't just about having a service either, it's also about the variety of content within that service. It used to be that streaming services focused on scratching one specific content niche. You could get a service just for anime or British shows, but consumers told us that's no longer enough and emphasized how important it is for services to have a variety of content to satisfy their needs. As one of our respondents very succinctly stated, streaming is almost like a buffet. I like the choice. So if I feel like Chinese or Italian or Mexican, Netflix has that. Comedy, action, adventure, sci-fi, cooking shows for the misses, they have everything. That's important because I never know what kind of mood I'm in to watch something, but I don't want to be in a mood to watch something and have that cuisine not available. A great example of this is Disney+. Social media back in November may have freaked out over Baby Yoda, but our research at that time demonstrated he wasn't the main driver of direct signups for Disney+. According to our Streaming 360 and Qual research conducted in November and December of 2019, twice as many people subscribed for access to the variety of the Disney Vault than they did to watch The Mandalorian specifically. So what else drives content and platform usage? Well, at our core, people are social, and they want to have a relationship with what they're watching. But the definition of social has evolved dramatically in recent years, largely because of technological innovations. Social used to refer to your world in real life, but now your world has infinitely expanded to include everything online and in the social media landscape. So instead of gossiping about people you know, you can judge plenty of people you don't. Just look at Reddit. From people posting pictures of themselves to get quote-unquote roasted, to becoming your own personal Dear Abby on a subreddit called Our Relationships, you become personally invested in what total strangers are doing. Think about what's happening on social media today. High school theater groups are posting videos for Lin-Manuel Miranda and all of Twitter to see. John Legend is inviting us into his living room for a private show. While what we're seeing today is an extreme version of this trend, we're all tuning in to feel like a part of a community with people we've never met. We used to have parasocial or one-sided relationships with content. For example, back in 2004, before Facebook really took off, you or someone in your life probably had a strong opinion on whether Big or Aiden was the man for Carrie. Or maybe you were staunchly Team Jen or Team Brangelina. You could scream at your TV or your Us Weekly as much as you want, but they'd never talk back. But in 2020, why would you settle for yelling at your TV when you could have an actual relationship with what you're watching? Going back to our platform example earlier, we found that people didn't change from Twitch to Mixer just for Ninja because he was still very much a part of their lives. He was still with them on Twitter, he was still with them on Instagram. And the image here is an example of Ninja interacting with a fan. He retweets her streaming about him. She then freaks out about him retweeting her, and she retweets one of her fans commenting on how she's freaking out. It's basically social media inception. Just listen to some of our ethnography participants talk about their relationships with influencers to understand this dynamic.
The relationship that I have with like certain TV shows that I watch, I feel like it's not the same compared to YouTubers or something. I don't know, I feel like they're more real.
I feel as though I have a relationship with some of the bloggers. They're showing me when they wake up, what they eat every single day, how they make it. So instead of being with them literally in person, it's like you're with them through a phone.
I definitely had a pretty special relationship with this YouTuber. He like told people a lot about himself, and like I felt like he got me through a lot of like pain in my life.
I think if Beyonce followed me, or if Jackie Aina followed me, I'd probably pass out. Beyonce is like my spirit animal. We're both Virgos. She's truly my best friend, so you know it's the truth.
For me, when the podcast that I'm very invested in and the people that are talking on the podcast or running the podcast, it almost feels like I know them. I'm grateful that a lot of them don't live around me because I'm sure if I ran into them and be like, oh, we're best friends, right? No, we're not. They don't know me at all.
These intense relationships aren't just about influencers either. What sets Netflix apart from other streaming services is that it has successfully formed social bonds with its customers. When I did similar research 8 years ago when I was client-side, consumers had feelings about Netflix, but they weren't the same. Netflix was their wise uncle or dad with good intentions. He may not always get it right, but he means well. Think Ty Burrell's Phil Dunphy from Modern Family. Now consumers talk about Netflix as if it's a boyfriend or girlfriend that they can't imagine being without.
I think that Netflix is technically my husband when my husband's away. Sorry.
Come on!
It's an old friend. And every now and then that old friend gets a new tune.
My relationship with Netflix sometimes can be unhealthy. I was talking to someone recently where they got rid of Netflix, and I had such a physical reaction to that. Like, I could feel my emotions like, wait, what? Even though there might be a period of time where I don't go on Netflix, the thought of getting rid of it is just absurd to me. And I think it's because I've had a relationship with it for so long that I can't imagine it not being in my life.
And we didn't just see this bond in Qual either. As part of our Streaming 360 research, we used a discrete choice model to understand the strength of different elements of streaming services to understand how they'd contribute to platform choices. Based on brand alone, Netflix enjoys 50% share of preference, and the second strongest brand, Prime Video, only enjoys 17%. In short, the media is asking the wrong question. It's not about who's going to win the content wars or who's going to beat Netflix, but rather who will become that second or third app in a consumer's content folder or consideration set. And what's interesting, especially given the current climate, is that consumers are looking for more shows and movies to watch. So what are the attractors that drive it? As part of our Streaming 360 research, we use drivers analysis across streaming services to understand why people subscribe to specific platforms. So we have this data in aggregate and by brand. While the top 3 subscription drivers are content that keeps me coming back for more, value, and content my friends and family talk about, when we looked at people with different engagement levels, we uncovered something really interesting. For those who have the most streaming subscriptions, they are the people most likely to be seeking out these social bonds. In other words, FOMO is the top driver underlying their platform decisions. So how does a new streaming service or TV channel win the 2020 content wars? Well, using this framework, think about how your library may satisfy a variety of need states. It used to be about serving just one particular niche, but in 2020, consumers are looking for a lot more, especially since they only have so much to spend on streaming services and content. Also, make it easy on consumers to access your content. This could mean anything from curating content by need state to rethinking exclusivity for library content. The more places it's available, the easier it is for consumers to talk, share, and love your shows and movies. And then finally, be social with your audience. It's not just about being on social media. It's also about engaging with your fans and empowering them to engage back. Thank you so much for joining me today. While we've run out of time, I'll do my best to follow up with you individually regarding all of your great questions that you've been sending in. Have a wonderful day.